The abandoned mining colony on Dracon 7 was supposed to be Captain Jalen Cross's refuge from the galaxy's chaos. After 30 years of service in Earth's Marine Corps, fighting in the Centauri Wars and the Krillian insurrection, he'd earned his silence. The remote planet offered exactly that: endless crimson deserts, twin suns that painted the sky in perpetual amber, and not a single sentient being for 300 kilometers. Until the night he heard the screaming. Jalen bolted upright in his bunk, pulse rifle in hand, before his eyes fully opened. Old instincts died hard. The sound came again, high-pitched and desperate, cutting through the howling wind outside his shelter. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't human, but it was definitely afraid. He pulled on his combat vest, checked his weapons charge, and stepped into the Dracon night. The temperature had dropped to -20, but his thermal gear compensated. His headlamp cut through swirling dust as he followed the cries toward the ancient lava tubes that honeycombed the nearby cliff face. The sounds grew louder, more frantic. Jalen's tactical display showed no life signs. Whatever was making that noise either didn't register on standard scanners or was too small to trigger alerts. He descended into the largest tube, boots crunching on volcanic glass, until his light swept across a sight that stopped him cold. 8 creatures, each no larger than a house cat, huddled in a circle. Their scales shimmered between obsidian and deep purple, and their wings, translucent membranes stretched over delicate bone, fluttered weakly. Dragons. Actual dragons. The galaxy had whispered rumors of them, ancient beings from the inner rim, but they'd been declared extinct 3 centuries ago. And they were dying. The hatchlings were emaciated, their ribs visible beneath thin scales. Crystalline eyes, already dimming, tracked Jalen's approach with desperate hope. One of them, slightly larger than the rest, dragged itself forward on trembling legs. It opened its mouth, and instead of fire, only a weak chirp emerged. "Easy there, little one," Jalen murmured, lowering his rifle. He'd seen enough death in his career to recognize it stalking these creatures. "Where's your mother?" As if in answer, his headlamp found the enormous skeleton half buried in collapsed rock at the cave's far end. The adult dragon had been massive, easily 20 meters from snout to tail. Scorch marks and impact craters suggested a battle. She'd fought something and lost, but not before sealing her young in this chamber. How long had they been alone? Days, weeks? The largest hatchling, the one who'd approached him, made another sound, this one almost questioning. Its crystalline eyes, shot through with amber, met his with an intelligence that made his breath catch. "All right," Jalen said, making a decision that would have seemed insane an hour ago. "Let's get you 8 out of here." He triggered his comm unit. Cross to supply depot. Authorization Cross 77 Alpha. Emergency medical requisition. The AI acknowledged. Route all available nutrient paste, thermal blankets, and portable environment controls to my coordinates. Priority override. "That action will deplete 70% of your annual supplies, Captain Cross," the AI warned. Confirmed. Execute. While the delivery drone made its way to his location, Jalen did what Marines did best. He improvised. He shed his thermal jacket and wrapped the largest hatchling in it. The creature's body temperature was dangerously low. One by one, he gathered the other 7, creating a nest from his spare clothing and equipment webbing. The eldest hatchling watched his every move with those knowing eyes. When Jalen carefully lifted her, he was certain now it was female. She made a soft trilling sound and pressed her snout against his chest, right over his heart. "Yeah, I know," he said softly. "Scary being alone." "I get it." The supply drone arrived within the hour. Jalen worked through the night, warming the hatchlings gradually to avoid thermal shock, hydrating them with electrolyte solutions, and carefully feeding them processed nutrient paste. His medical training from countless battlefield triage situations guided his hands. 3 of the hatchlings were in critical condition. He rigged up makeshift IV drips using his combat med kit, adjusting human medicine to alien biology through pure guesswork and prayer. The eldest, he'd started thinking of her as Silthra after an old Earth legend, stayed by his side, watching him work with an intensity that bordered on understanding. By dawn, all 8 were stable. By the 3rd day, they were chirping for food every few hours. By the end of the first week, small jets of flame accompanied their cries, and Jalen had to fireproof his shelter with emergency foam. Silthra grew fastest, her scales darkening to midnight purple with veins of silver. She followed Jalen everywhere, learning to hunt the silicon-based rodents that infested the caves. teaching her siblings the same, but she always returned to him, curling up against his side while he read or worked on equipment repairs. One evening, 2 months after he'd found them, Silthra approached him with something in her mouth. She dropped it at his feet, a piece of crystal from deep in the caves, perfectly shaped and glowing with inner light. Dragon hoards weren't just legend then, they were gifts. "Thank you," Jalen said, genuinely moved. He picked up the crystal and hung it around his neck. Silthra chirped, then did something that made Jalen's eyes widen. She projected an image, holographic thought perhaps, or something deeper, directly into his mind. He saw himself as she saw him. Not a scarred warrior seeking isolation, but a protector who'd chosen them over his own comfort. A father. "I guess retirement plans change," Jalen said, scratching behind her developing horns. Around him, 7 other dragons took flight in the shelter's limited space, their wings growing stronger every day. The galaxy thought dragons were extinct. They were wrong, and if anyone came looking for his charges, they'd learn what 30 years of marine combat experience looked like when protecting family. Captain Jalen Cross had found his new mission, and this time it was one worth fighting for.